The story begins not with thunder or spectacle, but with a quiet summer night in London. The kind of warm, faintly glowing night that softens the edges of the city and makes every gas lamp appear like a star lowered just close enough to touch. Walter Hartwright, a young drawing master, walked alone along the Hampstead Road, returning from the home of his mother and sister. The air was warm and clean, and despite the day's worries about money and uncertain employment, he felt the gentle comfort that comes from believing life is just about to change for the better. He had been offered a position, an unusual but welcome one. A wealthy gentleman named Frederick fairly wished to hire a drawing master for his two young relations living at his country estate, Limeridge House in Cumberland. The arrangement would begin in just a few days. Walter had accepted, feeling that perhaps the countryside air, the new surroundings, and the steady employment would clear his mind of its drifting anxieties. He was thinking of this new future when the moment came, the moment that would alter the course of his life and join him forever to a mystery larger and darker than anything he had imagined. It happened at the quietest hour when even the carriages had thinned and the last pub lights had dimmed. As Walter walked along the road, deep in his thoughts, he noticed a figure ahead of him. A woman, alone, dressed entirely in white from head to foot. She moved strangely, not as if strolling, but as if gliding swiftly yet uncertainly, always glancing behind her. Something in her posture, in the tension of her shoulders, carried an unmistakable message: fear. Walter hesitated, unsure if he should approach her. But she turned suddenly, saw him, and hurried toward him with a breathless urgency. "Is that the way to London?" she asked. Her voice trembled. Walter confirmed it was. The woman stepped closer, her eyes wide, bright, and full of some terrible secret. "Do you know of any houses near this place?" she asked. "On the road that leads to the city." Walter remembered that he had just come from such a house and told her so. Her relief was immediate but fragile. "Can I reach it?" she asked. "I have lost my way." Walter offered to guide her, and she accepted gratefully. As they walked, the woman spoke in short, trembling phrases. She said she had been brought up in the country. She admired the night air. She loved the stars when they appeared. She spoke like someone who had been confined for far too long. And then she said something stranger still. "Do you know any baronets in your part of the world?" she asked. Walter, surprised, said he did not. "I only wanted to know," she murmured. "I thought of one once, Sir Percival, but it's nothing now, nothing at all." She stopped, as if afraid she had said too much. Before Walter could ask more, the sound of carriage wheels drifted from far down the road. The woman froze. "They're coming," she whispered. "They are coming for me." Walter insisted she had nothing to fear, but her terror was unmistakable. She begged him again not to betray her, and then, spotting an empty cab approaching, rushed toward it. Walter helped her inside. She thanked him with a gratitude that seemed painfully deep, and the cab rattled off into the night. Moments later, the very carriage she feared came rushing by, two men inside calling to passers-by, asking if anyone had seen a woman in white. They spoke in sharp, urgent tones. "Escaped from the asylum," one said. "Dangerous to herself, we must catch her." Walter's heart pounded. He had helped a fugitive. But something in the woman's expression, her plea, the sincerity of her fear, made him certain she had not been mad. She had been desperate. He could not forget her. 2 days later, he arrived at Limeridge House. The estate was nestled in the peaceful northern countryside, surrounded by soft hills and long, rolling fields that seemed to hold the sunlight in gentle folds. Limeridge had a serenity that London could never match. At the door he was welcomed by Marian Halcombe, one of the two young women he had been hired to teach. Marian was like no woman he had ever encountered. Intelligent, confident, quick-witted, and unafraid to speak her mind. Her face was striking but not conventionally beautiful, yet her presence was unforgettable. She guided him through the house and spoke freely about the Fairley family. Her half-sister, Laura Fairley, would be his other pupil. Laura, she said, was gentle, elegant, and much loved by all who knew her. When Walter finally met Laura, he understood Marian's affection. Laura Fairley was the embodiment of beauty softened by goodness. Light complexion, soft gaze, and a quiet kindness that touched everything around her. But the most astonishing thing, what nearly made Walter's heart stop, was her resemblance. She looked almost exactly like the woman in white. The same soft face, the same delicate features, the same pale grace. Only Laura's expression was different, calmer, filled with innocence rather than fear. Walter tried to dismiss the coincidence, but it gnawed at him. As the days passed, Walter's admiration for Laura grew into love. He fought it, hid it, feared it, yet day by day the feelings strengthened. And Laura, though more reserved, revealed in small glances and shy hesitations that she felt something too. But Marian saw it all. One evening, on the terrace overlooking the moonlit garden, Marian spoke to Walter with a seriousness he could not ignore. She told him that Laura had been promised in marriage to a man named Sir Percival Glyde, as part of an arrangement made by her late father. The wedding was soon. Marian asked Walter, for Laura's sake, to leave Limmeridge and protect her honor. The next morning, Walter said goodbye. Laura could not speak. Marian, too, was shaken, though she hid it beneath her resolve. Walter left Limmeridge with a heart full of love, sorrow, and confusion, and with the mystery of Laura's resemblance to the woman in white still haunting him. Not long afterward, Laura received a letter from Anne Catherick, the woman in white. The letter warned her not to marry Sir Percival Glyde. It hinted at danger, at secrets unspoken. But the letter was vague, unsigned, and impossible to verify. And Laura, bound by honor and her father's wishes, went ahead with the engagement. Walter was gone, the future was set, and the woman in white had vanished. Laura Fairley's wedding day came with a mixture of quiet sorrow and tightly bound duty. Limmeridge House was never a place for loud celebration, and the ceremony passed with calm elegance rather than joy. Laura, exquisitely dressed and impossibly pale, stood beside Sir Percival Glyde with the steady composure of someone determined to please the memory of her father, even at the cost of her own heart. No one could have said she appeared unwilling, but neither could anyone have mistaken her for a bride in love. Marian Halcombe watched with a heavy heart. She knew what Laura sacrificed that day, and she knew, too, how deeply Walter Hartright had imprinted himself on both their lives, even after walking away. Still, Laura had made her choice, not from passion, but obligation, and Marian would stand by her through everything that followed. Sir Percival's manner remained courteous throughout the wedding, but there was an edge beneath his politeness, a stiffness, a nervous impatience. He seemed, Marian thought, like a man who could not disguise the strain of the future pressing upon him. For a short time after the wedding, life continued in a fragile calm. Marian accompanied Laura to their new home, Blackwater Park, Sir Percival's gloomy estate. They arrived as spring settled across the countryside, but the house's oppressive air swallowed even the sunlight. The rooms felt cold, the grounds tangled, the very atmosphere heavy with long-accumulated secrets. Marian kept a determined watchfulness about her, knowing Laura depended on her. Sir Percival greeted them with a hospitality that appeared warm on the surface. But beneath his show of good manners, Marian sensed something else, a quick temper, a possessive tone when he spoke Laura's name, a fidgeting anxiety that seemed to increase when the subject of money surfaced. It didn't take long for the first signs of danger to reveal themselves. Marian began to see the truth about Sir Percival once they settled into life at Blackwater Park. Laura, though still gentle and compliant, seemed increasingly burdened by her husband's moods. Sir Percival began pressing her to sign certain documents, legal papers of some sort, which he refused to let her examine closely. He waved her questions away, insisting that she should trust him as her husband. But Laura hesitated. She felt something was wrong. She told Marian that she could not sign anything she did not understand. This simple act of resistance enraged Sir Percival. On one particular afternoon, Marian overheard him raise his voice, harshly, for the first time since their arrival. "I am your husband, Laura," he shouted. "I will not be dictated to by either you or your meddling sister." Laura wept afterward, but her spirit did not entirely bend. Marian sat beside her, comforting her and promising never to abandon her. Later, Marian confronted Sir Percival directly, her voice firm, her eyes clear. "I will not allow Laura to be tormented," she said. "If she does not feel comfortable signing your documents, she will not sign them." Sir Percival was livid, but Marian's resolve was unshakable. That very evening, he brought in a new guest to Blackwater Park, a man who would change everything. Count Fosco arrived with the kind of entrance that could command silence simply through contrast. Where Sir Percival's presence brought tension, Fosco's brought a strange, unsettling stillness. He was a large man, immensely large, yet moved with surprising grace. His blue-gray eyes were bright, calculating, and almost hypnotic. His voice was soft, charming, and unnervingly courteous. He could praise someone with such elegance that the praise itself felt like a trap. His wife, Madame Fosco, accompanied him, a woman once Marian's aunt, now transformed into a silent shadow under her husband's influence. She moved mechanically, spoke rarely, and obeyed Count Fosco with an obedience that chilled Marian to the bone. Count Fosco wasted no time inserting himself into the life of Blackwater Park. He complimented Marian's intelligence. He admired Laura's sweetness. He befriended Sir Percival with flattering warmth. And yet Marian's instincts told her this man was the true danger, not Sir Percival. Fosco's smile was too smooth, his silence too purposeful, his attention too exact. Marian soon began to feel like a pawn under the keen eyes of a master strategist. The tension in the house grew daily. Sir Percival's debts were closing in on him. Marian suspected as much from the way he paced, muttered, and clutched letters in his hands, only to rip them to pieces moments later. Laura's fortune, once under her control, was about to become accessible to him under the marriage settlement. But there were legal complications. He needed her signature on documents to expedite matters. Laura refused, gently but firmly. This refusal was enough to drive Sir Percival, nearly mad with frustration. One night, Marian overheard raised voices again, Sir Percival's, angry and desperate, and Count Fosco's, calm but persuasive. She leaned closer to the door, heart hammering. "You must obtain her signature," Fosco said, "but you must do it without force or without any appearance of force. The law cannot be risked. Her death, as you have already considered, would give you nothing." I know," Sir Percival growled. "What do you propose?" "Something far more subtle," Fosco replied. "Something that requires patience and strategic pressure." Marian strained to hear the details, but footsteps approached, and she slipped away before being discovered. That night she lay awake, thinking of Walter Hartwright, his kindness, his strength, the way he had cared for Laura. She wished desperately he were there, but he was somewhere far from England, and Marian knew she had to protect Laura alone. Summer deepened. The heat pressed down on Blackwater Park, the air thick and heavy. It was during one of these stifling evenings that Marian made a fateful decision. She would climb onto the roofed terrace outside her bedroom and listen, truly listen, to what Sir Percival and Count Fosco planned. She knew they walked there at night to avoid scrutiny, speaking softly as they paced beneath the moonlight. Marian changed into dark clothing, stepped quietly onto the balcony, and lay flat against the warm stone tiles. Below her, the voices began. Sir Percival, agitated and packing quickly, repeated his fears. "If I cannot get her signature, I am ruined, utterly ruined." And then Fosco, with maddening calmness. "Then we must change the position. We must make it so that her signature is not required, or that another woman's hand can supply it." Marian's breath caught. "Another woman," Sir Percival whispered. "Yes," Fosco said. "A woman who resembles her, a woman we already know." Marian's heart froze. She knew at once who they meant. Anne Catherrick. The woman in white. Fosco continued, outlining the beginnings of a scheme, something involving identity, madness, and carefully planned substitution. Marian pressed her ear hard to the stone, desperate for more details, but a gust of wind carried the words away. She leaned farther, too far, and suddenly the sky broke open with rain. It fell in sheets, soaking her instantly. She lay there, clinging to the tiles, unable to move without making noise until the two men finally walked away. By the time she returned to her room, Marian was drenched, her hair dripping, her clothes clinging. Fever took her quickly. Within hours, she was delirious. Laura stayed by her bedside, terrified, but unable to stop what came next. While Marian burned with fever, helpless and unaware, Count Fosco and Sir Percival acted. Laura disappeared. Marian never realized she had fallen asleep until the faintest chime of a carriage bell slipped into the edge of her consciousness. It was not loud, not insistent, just a tiny metallic whisper drifting across the damp night air. But it was enough. Her eyes snapped open. She had not meant to sleep at all. The tiled roof beneath her was slick with dew, the chill of it aching into her bones. Her stiff fingers clung to the edge of the eaves as she pushed herself upright again, blinking the fog of sleep from her vision. Below her, the long black facade of Blackwater Park lay hushed and lightless, except for the faint glow leaking from the Count's private smoking room. Marian listened again. There another tiny sound, a murmur of wheels on gravel, a hushed voice, a soft thud of something placed upon the ground. Her pulse quickened. Someone had just arrived. She crawled forward carefully, inch by inch, until she reached the angle where the roof dipped closest to the courtyard. From here, she could just barely see the long gravel path that wound from the outer gate toward the servants' entrance. At first, there was nothing at all, only the mist drifting between the hedges. Then the shape emerged. A carriage, plain unmarked, the lanterns hooded. And two men, unloading something that looked terribly like a trunk, but far too heavy to be ordinary luggage. Marian's breath caught in her chest. The Count came into view shortly afterward, waddling with that deceptively lethargic stride of his, a pace that somehow always managed to fill the space around him with an oppressive certainty. He lifted a hand. One of the men froze. The other bent low in what seemed like fear. The Count gestured sharply toward the rear of the house. A whisper of dread threaded through Marian's stomach. What were they moving in the dead of night? Why such secrecy? Why such weight? She strained to hear. But a sudden wave of dizziness washed over her. The fever that had been slowly kindling beneath her skin all evening surged again, hot, spinning, heavy. She bit back a gasp, clenching her jaw to steady herself. Not now, not when she was so close to discovering the truth. But the body is never loyal to the mind's desperate demands. The dizziness deepened. Her breath turned shallow. Her vision pulsed with gray shadows. Still, she forced herself forward once more, desperate for one more look. That was her mistake. Her hand slipped. Not far, not enough to fall or cry out, but enough for her nails to scrape along a metal gutter with a faint, unmistakable tick. The Count's head whipped upward instantly, like a predator scenting motion. Marian froze, every muscle locking tight. She willed herself to become a shadow, a piece of slate roofing, a ghost of the night. For a moment, an agonizing, airless moment, the Count stared up directly toward her position. She didn't breathe. He didn't blink. Then, just as suddenly, he smiled. A slow, knowing, dreadful smile. And he turned away, continuing his instructions as if nothing had happened. But Marian knew. He had heard something. He had suspected something. And he would not forget it. Her limbs trembled violently now, not from fear alone, but from the fever burning higher within her. The night air seemed to bend and waver around her. She tried to crawl backward, away from the ledge, toward the window through which she had climbed earlier. She made it only halfway, before the world tilted sideways. Her body crumpled against the cold tiles. Her cheek pressed to the roof, her breath coming in uneven bursts. Below, the Count's voice rose for a brief moment, smooth, commanding, almost cheerful. Then everything faded. She awoke hours later in darkness, true darkness, the kind that holds no shape, no sense of place. She didn't know where she was at first. She couldn't tell if she lay on the roof or her bed or the cold stone floor of the corridor. Then a soft glow, dim, bluish moonlight, entered her vision as her eyes adjusted. She was in her room. In her bed. covered properly to the chin. Marian's heart lurched. Someone had moved her. Someone had found her. Her hand flew to the side table. Her journal, her precious record of everything she had witnessed, was not there. She sat upright too fast and nearly fainted again. A searing ache ran through her skull. Her journal, her evidence, gone. She pushed the blankets aside, swinging her legs to the floor. The room swayed around her. She clung to the post of her bed for balance. She staggered toward the small escritoire where she always kept her ink and papers. Empty. Every drawer empty. Her breath came ragged now, half from panic, half from the fever tearing through her. Her journal had been taken. But by who? The Count, Lady Glyde's uncle, one of the servants. Or... She froze suddenly. Her door was slightly open. A slit, barely a finger's width. Someone had entered recently. Someone had looked in on her, or checked that she was still asleep. Marian stepped backward softly, slowly, her breath quiet in her throat. A floorboard creaked faintly in the hallway. Then another. Someone was directly outside. She reached instinctively for something to defend herself with, but there was nothing. The room had been stripped bare of anything heavier than a pillow. The doorknob turned. Just slightly, just enough to test if she was awake. Marian held her breath. The knob paused, then retreated again. A slow exhale slipped from her lips. But before she could gather her thoughts, a whisper, barely audible, drifted through the crack. Rest, you need rest. Leave the rest to us. It was a woman's voice. Soft, young. But Marian could not place it. Her skin crawled. She waited until the footsteps faded into silence before she stumbled backward and collapsed onto her bed. Her head swam. Her pulse thundered in her ears. The fever surged relentlessly. She could barely think now. But one truth held clear. She was being watched. She was being controlled. And Laura, poor Laura, was in even greater danger than Marian had realized. Time slipped strangely after that. Marian drifted between fevered dreams and sharp bursts of waking clarity. She saw faces, some real, some imagined. Laura's tear-streaked cheeks, the Count's glimmering eyes, Walter's silhouette in London fog, Anne Catherick's pale hand reaching out of the shadows. Sometimes Marian thought she heard whispering in the hallway. Sometimes she heard her door open. Sometimes she felt a cold cloth pressed against her burning forehead. And everywhere, beneath it all, there was that terrible sense of being managed, controlled, monitored. Her journal was gone. Her strength was gone. Laura was alone. And the Count, oh, the Count, was moving swiftly with whatever plan he had forged. Marian knew she had to act. She had to get out of this bed, out of this room, out of this fog in her mind. But when she tried to stand, the world spun violently, and she fell back helplessly. The fever held her prisoner more completely than any locked door could. And somewhere in the house, plans were unfolding, silent, secret, deadly. Plans she could no longer witness. Plans that would change the lives of everyone she loved.